Sairam all. Welcome to our October episode of Regional 10 Inspirational Channel. And today we'll be having a different kind of format. Like usually, our format is one speaker speaking to you, inspiring with the stories, experiences, and the uh, effects of Swami's love and other stuff. And today we are slightly deviating from that path and having a kind of panel. And this panel is none other than the panel of members who have been teaching RSS children for the last quite a few years. And all these are group 4 teachers. And some housekeeping announcements before getting to this one. Since this is a live channel, we would like to take questions definitely. And the questions you can you can type in the chat window, which is on the YouTube channel on the right side. And the last 10 minutes are dedicated for the questions and answer sessions. You can choose a specific speaker and say, okay, I have this question for so-and-so person. We are fine with that. If you have a general question and open to anyone, one of the panelists will pick it up. So, and that coming to the format of this particular session, it's going to be kind of a moderator with 3 panelists. And it's a round robin questions. Questions will go one after the other, different questions to different speakers. And with this brief housekeeping and the format session, we would like to go with the introduction of all the speakers here. I'll go with the first speaker, Gopi Balakrishnan. Gopi is a SSC parent and also an SSC teacher from Houston. He came to Swami's fold at a very, very young age. He did his schooling in Trivandrum, Kerala, and was an active member of the Madhuvanam Satsai Ashram in its formative days, very, very early days. He got associated with a group of students who were making the task of setting up the ashram in the suburbs of Trivandrum. Besides that, he was a Sevadal at the weekly medical camps and devotional activities at Madhuvanam. He migrated to US for higher studies in late 90s. He did his master's in electrical power engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in New York and currently works in the field of technology management and digital transformation. With this, may I request Gopi to greet the audience.
My humble palms to Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba, our beloved master, and my humble sairams to all of you.
Thank you, Gopi. The second panelist is Paddy Padmanabhan, who is a long-time devotee of Swami and has been teaching in the SSC program since 1997. He is currently a Group 4 teacher at the Dallas Sai Center and has served the Satsai organization in several capacities. Since 1998, at Swami's calling, he has been involved in teaching finance to MBA students at the Satyasai Institute of Higher Learning in Puttaparthi as a visiting faculty. Paddy has also served as an adjunct professor of finance in the MBA program at Indiana University and Purdue University for a period of 20 years from 1992 to 2012. Paddy moved to the US in 1975 to pursue his graduate studies in business. His professional experience includes serving as principal consultant and practice leader in a global management consulting firm, CEO of 2 technology companies, and managing partner in a private equity firm. He retired from active work in 2018 and devotes his time to Swami's education mission, executive education, and mentoring and public policy matters. With this introduction, may I request Paddy Uncle to greet the audience, please. Sir and Paddy Uncle.
Om Sri Sai Ram to everybody. I'm glad to be part of this panel and share my thoughts with all of you.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on to the next participant of the panel, Supriya Kharod. Supriya lives in Austin with her husband, Ketan, and 3 children. She first learned of Swami and started attending the Sai Center in Southfield, Michigan when she was 10 years old. She attended Bal Vikas for a few years before her family moved to Peoria, Illinois, and then to Dallas. While doing her undergraduate studies in advertising at the Southern Methodist University and later working as an art director for an international ad agency as an young adult, Supriya also helped with the SSC program and was involved in the YA program at the local, regional, and national levels. She served as female YA coordinator in Dallas and did her SSC teacher training before she got married and moved to Austin in 2001. She has taught Group 1 and has served as Center SSC coordinator, but now enjoys teaching Group 4 students. Her children are in Group 1, 2, and 3 currently. She also enjoys playing the tabla, harmonium, and guitar during bhajans, whatnot, almost everything. Also a martial arts instructor, a semi-professional artist, and a full-time mother. With this introduction, may I request Supriya to greet the audience, please.
Saidam, I'm very grateful to Swami for this opportunity and look forward to sharing the evening with all of you. Saidam.
Thank you. Thank you, Supriya, Paddy, and Gopi. Welcome to the session. And in fact, we have sent out a request to all the center members asking to give your questions beforehand so that we'll try to address that. And thank you all for giving those questions. And we have shortlisted a few questions. So in case your question was sent to us and it doesn't appear today, please excuse us because we have so many questions and we had to shortlist a few. With this introduction, let's get on to the very first question. All the participants, this question is for all of you. And we'll go with Gopi first. Gopi, how long have you been teaching SSC? And what is making you to teach SSC? Why have you chosen SSC program? What inspired you? Why did you become an SSC teacher?
Okay.
And I don't interfere after this one. After Gopi, I'll go with Supriya, then Paddy Uncle. Sairam, Gopi, please go ahead.
Okay. Once again, Sairam, and I'm delighted to be here and have this opportunity. So to address this first question of how long I've been teaching SSC and what inspires me, I will say that it wasn't until 2011 that I got associated with any Sai center in the US, although I had moved to the US in the late 90s. And so Houston is where the action began for me. And when I came to Houston in 2011, I didn't join SSC right away. I was very gravitated towards all the service activities that were going in the center. And it wasn't until 2015, but in the meanwhile, my wife, Pavitra, had immediately engaged with SSC and got her training and then became a teacher. And in 2015, there was a sudden shortage of Group 4 teachers. So that was kind of the turning point for me, because on one day, we were coming back from the center after the bhajans, and Pavitra just asked the question to me, why? What stopped me from thinking about being an SSC teacher? I said, nothing stopped me. I wasn't averse, but I just did not think about it because I was really enjoying our adult study circle and more focused on enriching myself at that stage. So at that point, her question kind of pushed me. I took the plunge and I've been involved ever since. So the second part of your question was what inspires me. So I'll say what inspires me to continue being in SSC is really the fact that it's a great opportunity for me to broaden and deepen my spiritual perspective and underscoring in a very practical way. So I have not been able to gain my spiritual transformation with this level of practicality before I came to SSC. And then using this perspective that I'm gaining on a day-to-day basis, I'm able to really connect with the current generation of high schoolers. And that's really very inspiring and motivating to be amongst them because they are a bright bunch. And when we talk more, I'll share some more thoughts about my experiences with them. But, the hope I have and the inspiration I get is to make some positive impact in their metamorphosis from being a kid to a young adult. So that is my inspiration, and I've been doing it since 2015. So Sairam, and I'll pass it over to Supriya. Sairam.
Sairam, thanks, Gopi. Thank you for the question, Murli Bhai. I have been teaching SSC for about 6 years now, but I've been connected with the SSC program for over 30 years now. And the reason for that is because my mother got her SSC teacher training in 1989. And since then, if my mom was involved, I was involved. And so when she taught in the Dallas Sci Center, when all the other aunties and uncles who taught in the Dallas Sci Center, they would involve me. They would say, Supriya, come to our class, come participate, come, sing a bhajan for the kids, whatever it was, come help lead an activity. I would do it. And so all of the other teachers that I was surrounded by, they made SSC look so much fun. So I could not wait until I could become an SSC teacher. And the thing is, I love children. I have always loved children. I will always love children. And they are just so much fun. They're curious. And I love making children laugh and smile, especially my group fours. Because teenagers, you don't see smiles on their faces so often. So I just love it when they crack a smile or laugh in class. That just makes me so happy. What inspires me is Swami, of course, because he has said so many things about education. He has given us his whole life as an example. And when you have that example to inspire you, there's nothing else. I mean, it's like, it's the ultimate, it's the pinnacle. So when I teach my group 4 children right now, I like to discover what are their passions. Do they like music? Do they like art? Do they like sports? What do they like? And I like to find out what makes people tick. And once I do that, then I try to see, okay, how can I apply that in the class? How can I apply that in the lesson? Because then they feel connected too. And when they feel connected, I feel inspired. So it's kind of like this circular process of your students. Your children inspire you, you inspire your children. Swami inspires all of us. So it's just inspirational all around. So Sairam, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Paddy, Uncle.
Paddy uncle, you are on mute in case you are speaking.
I'm sorry. When I came into the SSC program, it was in 1997. And there was nothing inspirational about me becoming an SSC teacher. It was the circumstances that just made it happen. We were in a small center in Indiana, and our kids at that time were going to the Bal Vihar SSC program, which was run by the Chimia Mission. Well, we were very actively involved in the center. And then in 1997, we decided that we wanted to start our own SSC program. There were about 12 adult members there. There were 8 kids. We sat down and there were no volunteers to take on the SSC program. So I raised my hand. I asked my wife to raise her hand. And another friend of ours raised his hand. So the 3 of us became SSC teachers. I covered group 3, my wife group 2, and my friend covered group 1. And that's how we got into the SSC program. But as we got involved in it, and there was really no inspiration, but it was just wanting to start this program and expose our kids to it. But as we got involved, the real inspiration started happening a year later. And little did we, at the time of starting, realize how involvement in SSC would grip our lives and transform our lives, right? So the first year we struggled. We got all the teaching materials. We started the 3 of us sitting together and preparing classes. And then we struck a relationship with Bernice Mead and got to know her, started working closely with her, and we had several interactions with her. One of the person who truly inspired me about SSC, explaining to her our interactions with Swami and kind of guiding me to be an effective SSC teacher, was Bernice Mead. And I think it was a connection that Swami had made. right? The thing that my wife and I found, we were very immersed in it, and we would sit down and dwell deep into Swami's teachings, come back, exchange ideas, and then we would start developing lesson plans. And as we started developing lesson plans and we were getting ready to deliver the lessons, the question we would ask ourselves is, are we competent to deliver this? The answer would obviously be no, because unless you practice, you're not competent to deliver it. So we became obsessed as a result of SSC to start practicing Swami's teachings in our everyday life. And that's where the transformation started, right? And very soon, Satyasai education became the focal point in our house. We told our children that it is not an option for you to go to SSC, it is a requirement. And that requirement was bigger than you're going to school and learning, because we saw that there was tremendous amount of value that this would create for the children and strengthen their performance in school. While this was going on, we connected with a number of SSC teachers in Region 5. And there were a lot of people in our age group with our kids. And it became a practice for us to talk. And we started building some incredible friendships and great ideas and exchanging the difficulty in practicing Swami's teachings. And there was a closeness that we built. While this was going on among the adults, the kids were starting to show some incredible progress. That's when we realized that having been drawn into this SSC program was really a blessing from Swami, because it had started an enormously huge transformation process, not only in me, but in my family, in my children, and among our friends. Even today, we recall that, and we talk about what a smart decision we had all made to become SSC teachers. So the outcome of what evolved from the teaching, our focus and transformation of our lifestyle, becoming more spiritual, the children having a value system, and as they grew and started their own families, they're maintaining the values they learned in SSC today is also inspirational. So some of the events that followed are the ones that inspire me today to come and teach SSC on a very regular basis. It's one of the biggest sadhana I believe I'm doing for my own progress, spiritual progress. And it is something that it would be hard for me to give up for as long as I live in this world, because it is a very beautiful way to connect with Swami and serve Swami. So that's my inspiration. Saira.
Thank you. Thank you all the three participants giving your insights, like how you came to this SSC program and how it's motivating you. One common thing I see is like Swami is the underlying inspiration for all three of you. But Gopi is kind of an accidental SSC teacher, and though his passion lying somewhere else, he became an SSC teacher. Then he started involving completely into that one. And the same is the case with Paddy uncle also. But Supriya is not like that. Supriya is going along with her mother to SSC classes, and she grew with a passion to become an SSC teacher one day. So now tell me, Supriya, question is for you. What do you see is the real value and the benefit the SSC program offer to the children?
Sure, absolutely. And this, honestly, this is a huge topic, and we could talk about this for days, because Swami has given so many discourses about the SSC program. So I'll kind of give it a little bit in a nutshell, just to kind of explain how school education and spiritual education work hand in hand. So the way school education works is that you learn about the world. You go to school, a teacher teaches you, and they give you a lot of information. You fill your head with information. And that's what Swami says about a teacher. A teacher has a head-to-head relationship with the student. They'll fill their head with information. Now, SSC, spiritual education, is different because Swami is very particular about this. He says that I call my SSC teachers gurus. They are gurus because a guru has a heart-to-heart connection with the child. So what's the role of the guru? Well, one of the roles is to fill the child's heart with feelings of peace, love, kindness, compassion, all of these wonderful values to create that feeling in the heart. So it's a heart-to-heart education. So school education focuses on learning about the external world. And SSE, spiritual education, focuses on learning about the internal world. And Swami says the internal world is pure, it's permanent, it's unchanging. So he really puts an emphasis on learning about the internal world. So the thing is that I'm sure all of you have heard Swami's quote, start early, drive slowly, arrive safely. In the context of education, he talks about that. In the context of spiritual education, he says that we have to start our kids early. Spirituality is not something once you take on after retirement. He says start the kids early. Drive slowly. This is not an overnight program. This takes a long time. It takes many years. It takes the guru, it takes the parent, it takes everybody working together, being on the same page. Drive slowly and arrive safely. What does arrive safely mean? That's when the transformation is happening. And that transformation that happens, that is between Bhagwan and the child. So the guru isn't directly involved in that. The parent isn't directly involved in that. It is that one-on-one relationship between that child and Swami. And so that's the transformation that happens through spiritual education. But Swami says that you need worldly education. You can't just have one without the other. And I actually want to share one thing that I was listening to a series in Radio Sai, and it's called The Miracle of Pure Love. And it's basically Swami's life story that's been narrated by Professor Venkatraman. And Professor Venkatraman is a former vice chancellor of the Satya Sai University, and he's also a physicist, a well-renowned physicist. So in this Miracle of Pure Love, he quotes another physicist by the name of David Bohm. And he says, David Bohm says, that the head creates problems and then tries to solve those problems. But the more it thinks, the more problems are created. So what Professor Venkatraman shared, what Swami told him, was that the head and the heart must come together. But the head must bow down to the heart. Then only can love flow, and love solves all problems. So if we think about what Sai spiritual education is, it is learning about that love that's already within us and teaching that head to bow down to that heart, bow down to that love. So that's what we're trying to accomplish through Swami's spiritual education program.
Very interesting, very interesting. You brought two different concepts. One is mind and one is heart. Am I interrupting you or you're?
No, I'm finished.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I really like that one, actually, the way how you narrated those two different aspects, like head and heart. Head has to bow down to the love which is emanating from the heart. Unless you fill the heart with love, it will not have. It will not happen. And I believe and I see there are so much of activity of teacher training happening here in Region 10, and all of you are participating in that one. And there are so many aspiring teachers also. Once in a while we'll conduct, and so many people are really interested in coming back and say, okay, I also want to become a teacher. And Paddy uncle, like with your experience, and you have been teaching to a lot of SSC students, and also you have been participating in the study circles with adults, and they would have seen so many aspiring SSC teachers. Would you like to advise them, saying that what are the tips or what are the points they need to take into consideration before becoming a teacher?
Yeah, sure, Murli. One of the good thing or bad thing, I don't know, as you get older, somehow people reach out to you for advice, as if you know things better than you're supposed to know things better, right? But in the course of my involvement with the Satya Sai groups, several people have come and asked that question: what is your advice, and what should we focus on to becoming an SSC teacher? And I ask these people two questions first before deciding to invest time in encouraging them to be a teacher, right? The first question is, why do you want to teach the SSC program? The answer to that question always to me was very important. And based on the response to the question, if the question came from the heart and they had a broader purpose to getting involved in the SSC program, and that was important to me because I learned it the hard way. I started in the SSC program, and a year later, my purpose started to become very broad. So I want to see whether that response is coming from the heart and there is a true motivation internally for them to do it. If that happens, then my next question would be, are you mentally prepared and ready to teach in SSC? Because mental preparation is very important to be an SSC teacher. And I want to explain that a little bit and take you to some of the wisdom Swami had shared with us to be an effective teacher. The reason I want to do that is that's the way. It's a self-decision that you have to make. And if you feel satisfied with all of what Swami said and you feel you can offer that, then you're ready to go. But before I go into learning from veranda conversation, one of the things that I would like to advise you is do not ever think of getting into the SSC program because your respect in the center grows, or it is a very good thing to check because you're a Sai devotee, or somebody convinced you could be a good teacher, why don't you come and teach SSC students? Or your center coordinator had trouble because there was no supply of SSC teachers. You were his friend, and therefore he was trying to work with you to come and teach in the program. Believe me, these are not good reasons to teach in the SSC program. Teaching in the SSC program is a spiritual sadhana. Teaching in the SSC program is an upliftment of yourself. It is participating in the divine mission of Swami. So unless you have the motivation within, do not embark on becoming a teacher in the SSC program. That's my sincere advice. So the question, why do you want to teach in the SSC program, is a question you have to answer yourself. And if you get an answer that satisfies your inner self, by all means, get actively involved in it. But before you do, ask yourself this question: am I ready to teach in the SSC program? Okay, the reason why you have to ask that question is teaching in the SSC program is not like teaching in any other program. Teaching in the SSC program involves you understanding and practicing the teachings of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. If you feel you are on that path and Swami is the center of your life and you're busily focused on practicing all of the Swami's values that he has taught us, then you are on the right path to get involved in the SSC program. See, Swami's mission teaching is very important, right? Because Swami came to teach us how to be righteous and attain liberation. That was the purpose of his mission. And if you observe Swami, he has been teaching his entire life, right? How many discourses has he given? He meets you and talks to you and gives you an interview. He's teaching you. Every time he gives discourses, he's teaching you. So teaching and guiding people was an integral part of Swami's mission for us to become better people. So in Swami's mission, and I'm sure Murli can understand this, teachers have a very special role for him, and students have a very special role for him. Because he believes that transformation is not coming from the older people because they have set ways to do it. The transformation comes in younger people, and teachers play a very important role in helping them achieve that transformation, right? So that's the premise under which he operates, which is why he always spends a lot of time with the students and with the faculty. right? The people who teach there, because it's a very important part of this mission. So if you're getting into the SSC program, you have to do a self-assessment of yourself and say, am I ready to teach? Am I practicing? If I'm practicing, what I have learned from it, what are the things I need to practice more? These are some self-inquiry that you have to be doing before you decide to come into the SSC program. Because this is about spiritual transformation and building character in children, right? Unless you're practicing, you're not learning. And unless you're not learning, you cannot be a good teacher. In addition to that, I want Murli to put up a slide where we'll talk about some of the qualities that Swami expects us to have as teachers in the program. This was a slide that I used in our SSC teacher study circle, and I thought it would be a very appropriate slide to present here as well, right? Think about the requirements of a teacher. These were put together, and I compiled this over a period of 8 years, listening to Swami converse with teachers on the veranda, and answers to some of the questions that I had asked him during some personal interviews. Here's what Swami says, and as I'm reading this, there's your answer, whether you're ready to be an SSC teacher or not. Ask yourself how far you have progressed and how much you believe in all of this. If the answer to every one of these is yes, you're right on your way to becoming an SSC teacher. So here are the things Swami said. Teacher must excel in humility, simplicity, morality, and integrity, so education results in excellence. SSC teaching is about making our children achieve excellence as human beings, right? So this is a very important thing. Duty as a teacher involves intensive preparation, most effective communication, and inspiring students. Preparation is very key for a teacher. If you get immersed in the SSC program, a 5-7 hour preparation a week, plus intensely practicing what you're going to teach in class in your life consumes you. And so the commitment that you should have is extremely high. Swami said, all teachers talk a lot, few explain, but good teachers inspire. This is very key. You need to be able to inspire children, and that should be a natural quality coming out of you. Before seeking to impact values to students, teacher must set examples by practicing it. This is very big in Swami's view. If you are not practicing, you shouldn't be teaching. And he has scolded teachers for not practicing some of what they teach, right? Don't fix students, fix yourself first. That was a direct command for Swami to the teachers one time in the veranda. Don't fix students, fix yourself first. A good teacher makes poor students good and good students better, right? Because if you're a good teacher, a student is a student. You don't evaluate them whether they are good or bad. Your job is to teach them, make them better than what they are when you see them, right? When a student fails, teacher has also failed. So if your student is not interested or motivated in SSC, please don't blame the child or blame the family circumstances. It's important for the teacher to blame themselves and work with the family and the child to overcome the failure. Don't be proud imagining the students need you. You need the students more. As an SSC teacher, you must be prepared to learn from your students based on the questions they ask you sometimes, right? So there's a lot of humility needed to go into an SSC classroom and start teaching the students, because you too can make mistakes, right? Service to student is not only for their sake, but for your sake as well. I have personally believed that the best way to serve Swami and the best way to focus on service is focus on teaching and educating the students. And I spend most of my time in serving Swami's education mission, because that's where I know how to give my very best. So I spend a lot of time there. And Swami always said that everybody has a divine quality. You have to discover the divine quality and offer that divine quality as service to people. And so teaching for me is a passion, and that I believe is a quality that I offer as service to people. And that's my best way to serve Swami, right? Students rely on you, so sacrifice what you need for them. Sacrificing for your students is very key to being a good teacher. And the relationships you build because of the sacrifices that you make is enormous. After all these years, I still remember my chemistry professor, when any of his students were sick and couldn't come to college, he would make it a point to visit them at home and share with them what he had taught in class. I have never seen dedication in a teacher like that, right? So that was a sacrifice he made, and students remember you. And when he died, people from all over the world, we collected to honor his death and honor his life. It's really a beautiful experience. A good teacher reveals simplicity, not explain complexity. Teach boys practical things. That's what I like. This is a command that Swami gave me directly, and I just want to take 30 seconds to share it. One time, Swami asked a question to me. He said, what are the different kinds of knowledge? And when Swami asks you a question, you learn not to answer it, because he's asking you a question because you don't know the answer to it, and the Lord is going to tell you. So you prepare yourself and wait for the answer. And this is what Swami said. There are 4 kinds of knowledge. The first knowledge is bookish knowledge. And he said, that's what all the boys have. They read the books, and that's the knowledge they have. And he said, that's easy knowledge. The second kind of knowledge, Swami said, is general knowledge. General knowledge is being aware of the environment. He said, general knowledge is atmic knowledge. Even that, you can try to get it. But the third kind of knowledge, he said, is discriminatory knowledge. He said, that is your ability to differentiate right from wrong. And he said, as your discriminatory knowledge grows, your general knowledge grows. So as your discriminatory power increases, you begin to realize the power of Atma, right? The fourth kind of knowledge, Swami said, is practical knowledge. He said it's the most difficult form of knowledge, and that's what I like. Then it was almost a command to me. He said, teach boys practical things. That's what I like, right? So I thought I would bring that to you, because practicing Swami's teachings and teaching the children the practice of Swami's teaching is what your entire focus as an SSC teacher ought to be. The more you practice, the more you realize the difficulties of practicing, and the better you can be as a teacher. And the last thing, teaching is best discharged with discipline. Discipline should be enforced with love and understanding. This discipline is just not disciplining the student. It's also a discipline that you as a teacher needs to develop. If you set example of being a disciplined person, then you can enforce discipline in your class. And the discipline is enforced through love and understanding, not being strict and rigid. So this was the education. So if all of you want to become a teacher, or those of you who are a teacher, I think run through this checklist. And if you feel good that you are involved in working or practicing all of those, you're ready to be a teacher. The new one, people who are interested, if this checks out for you, pick up the phone and call your SSC coordinators, because they can bring you into the program, put you through all the training you need, and connect you with all the teachers. It's a huge transformational moment to come in to teach in the SSC program, and it's probably the best sadhana you can do for self-realization. Sai Ram.
Thank you, Uncle. That's a beautiful description of how a teacher, aspiring teacher, should behave, or what he has to, or he or she has to look into that. What I like the most at the beginning, you mentioned that don't become a teacher to gain some, noticeability or, visibility in the center or something like that. Build the passion to teach. Then you become a proper teacher. And actually, when you're going through those messages Swami has mentioned, I remember so many incidents. Almost for every sentence, I visualize different incidents. One small example I'll give you. Swami, even a student did not understand a subject properly in the classroom, he taught. And so in the evening veranda, actually, Swami came out and talking to the boys, and he suddenly picked this particular student and asked him, which class you attended today? Then he mentioned 4 or 5 names. No, which one you did not understand? Then he said, Swami, I understood everything. And then Swami picked up a specific question from the class where actually he was having a problem. Then he said, tell me what is the meaning of this? And so this fellow was taken aback, because that is what actually it's back of mind. He didn't want to expose that particular teacher publicly, or he doesn't want to expose himself that he did not understand properly. And Swami explained the concept in public. And at times, as you have mentioned, teachers should not complain. They should not fix students, they have to fix themselves. So Swami has done both. He took teachers inside and talked to them. He took some students who deliberately did not study properly, and Swami fixed those students also. So he is like a master of everyone.
Everything.
Yeah.
Oh, there are so many stories like this you can tell, right?
Yeah.
It's just rich with experience, right?
Very much. And actually, that is very close to me also. Coming back to our question, we talked about SSC. We talked the SSC children. We talked about teachers. If you look at the triangle, actually, we left out one particular phase, that is parents. So what is the role of a parent in this particular SSC framework? So may I request Gopi to answer that?
Thank you for this opportunity, Murli Bhai. How are we doing on time before I get started? Give me some guidance and then I'll get started.
Sorry if I took more in my question.
No worries.
Yeah, we have around 15 minutes for the rest of the program before we jump on to any questions. I don't see any questions so far. Yeah, you can go ahead, and in case it's needed, we can go fast on the last one.
Okay. So to begin, the question was, what is the role of parents? How important is it for them to be engaged with the children and the class and the teachers and the SSC program? I think the simple one-word answer is extremely important. It is our duty. Parenting is what we have as our primary duty. As raising our kids, we want the best for them. And how are we trying to get the best for them? We have brought them to SSC. We have made a commitment. So with that in the basis, I want to first, refer to some of the quotes from Swami to set the context. So the question comes, what is the primary duty of all those who deal with children? And Swami has given an answer with this quote. But before I give the quote, it is, I think, undebatable for all of us that why we are talking about this triangle for the child with the parent and the teacher is because we are the ones who are dealing with the children. So the quote goes, plant in those tender hearts the seed of love, sympathy, truth, justice, charity, compassion, repentance, and self-control. That is the primary duty of all those who deal with children. So I think it's been explained very beautifully by Swami as to what we have to instill in the children and that it is our duty. So I think when we are trying to raise the children, it takes a village to raise the children, right? That's how we see our kudumbam, or the family of the Sai family, at our centers. So I think a parent needs to involve very much. There is one more quote that I want to bring in here to add a different flavor, which is about what is the environment that the parent needs to give to their children at home? And I would say that this is not just parent, it's parents, teachers, and all elders that the children are exposed to. The parent, teacher, and the elders must set a good example. The home atmosphere must be made purer and more holy. So I think these are very beautiful words. The home atmosphere must be made purer and more holy. And it also reinforces what Paddy Uncle was talking about. The children must learn by observation that their parents are happy. So are we as parents and elders happy? Children are watching. And without anxiety, so happy and without anxiety. So we all have a lot of stress in our life with whatever reasons, but how is that translating into the kids' mind? Very important, because they have when we are looking, let me read that sentence again. The children must learn by observation that their parents are happy and without anxiety because they have faith in God and know whatever happens is for the best. So I think this is where Swami is saying, not only it is important that you have to play this role of being engaged and involved, but how to play, what to emphasize on. And I would just summarize that with three things. Our children look up to us for three things from whatever Swami's quotes I have read. One is validation. They are looking at us as adults to validate for themselves that when we talk to them, are we walking the walk? When we say discipline, dedication, devotion, discrimination, determination, yes, the 5 Ds, that's what I'm talking about. And when our actions do not match our words, what are they taking away? They are saying, I can call out on the hypocrisy. So very important for us to be good validations for them. The second thing I said was inspiration and encouragement. So until we have transformed to be driven from within, and I'm talking about us as well as children, until the drive comes from within, we are looking for inspiration and encouragement from our surroundings. And we are spending all our time at home with our parents. Who can be a better role model for the children? So I think these are the three things. Now I will just quickly, if we have 30 seconds, I want to read from our SSC manual, this very beautiful parent prayer, because it sets the gold bar or the standard on how we understand that our engagement is our duty, but how to, impart that duty or perform that duty. So it says, "O Lord, teach me to understand my child, to listen patiently to what they have to say and to all their questions kindly. Keep me from interrupting them or contradicting them. Make me as courteous to them as I would have them be to me. Forbid that I should ever laugh at their mistakes or resort to shame or ridicule when they displease me. May I never punish them for my own selfish satisfaction or to show my power. Let me not tempt my child to lie or steal, and guide me hour by hour that I may demonstrate by all that I say and do the honesty, that honesty produces happiness. Reduce, I pray, the meanness in me. So reduce my meanness. And when I am out of sorts, help me, O Lord, to hold my tongue." So we don't want to hurt anybody with our words. That's what that says. May I ever be mindful that my children are children, and I should not expect of them the judgment of adults. Children are children, so let them be. Let me not rob them of the opportunity to wait on themselves and to make decisions. Bless me with the bigness to grant them all the reasonable requests and the courage to deny them privilege I know will do them harm. Make me fair and just and kind and fit to be loved, respected, and imitated by children. And so this is the prayer that kind of, if we read this and reread this, it really makes us ask that question, just like Paddy Uncle was saying. Ask yourself the question, are you prepared to be a teacher? No, we don't have a choice. We are already parents. So are we performing our duty, right? Are we performing our duty that Swami has expected of us. So that's how important our role is. We have to do it. Now, last but not the least, one part of the question was about the engagement between the parent and the teacher. So I want to just address that by saying that unless the parent is aware of what's going on in the class and has an opportunity to talk with the child during the week, what happened at SSC, or have some kind of a relationship with the teacher, so they know how can they reinforce, how can they bring the validation, the inspiration, and the encouragement in alignment with what is being discussed. So that connection is very important. And also, when Paddy Uncle was talking about the teacher's really heart-to-heart relationship with the student, the parent can do a lot of good for the teacher to forge that kind of a relationship with the student. Although it must be the teacher's own ways of connecting with the student, it always helps to have the relationship with the family, that we are able to bring that closeness, and that way we can transform ourselves from being teachers to guru. So with that, I will pause here with my answer. I hope I have answered this question in a reasonable way. Saira.
Very beautifully answered it.
Yeah.
Certainly very well answered it. And I like the point. Basically, as a teacher, you have an option whether to become a teacher or not. But once you become a parent, you don't have any option. You have to become a good parent to raise a good child. In fact, I was listening somewhere, Swami was talking about it, SSC curriculum, SSC program. He said, God has given this body to reach him. The body is an instrument through, you can use it and go back to him. And similarly, Swami said, SSC children are my children. I have given you that position of SSC teacher only to take care of them and divert them towards me. So that is what actually he has mentioned it. So parents and teachers become at the lower part of the pyramid to rise to that level. Now, Supriya, a question for you. We build the pyramid. In this pyramid, we have the student at the top and parent and teacher at the bottom to support that child. Now, how do you instill Swami in the middle? I have a question like, you have the curriculum, you have prepared a lot of stuff. Now, if you keep Swami there in the middle, he'll take care of everything. Our basic objective is to, as you have mentioned earlier, saying that you have to bring Swami into the hearts of the children. Now, the question is how you install Swami in that one. So that is the question for you. And after that question, if you recollect any of the moments you felt while teaching SSC students, that, this is an excellent moment, I enjoyed it. So these are the two questions for you. You can go one after the other.
Absolutely. I think of it as two things. You have to make Swami relatable and relevant to the children. So let's talk about relatable for a second. When we talk about Swami as divinity, a lot of times it gets that feeling, oh, okay, Swami's in the mandir, he's divine, he's unreachable, he's up here. So as gurus and parents, if we can cultivate the feeling in the child that Swami is my friend, that suddenly makes him much more relatable. But to do that, the first question is, do we have that feeling ourselves? Do we ourselves think of Swami as our friend? To be able to convey that message to your child, you have to feel it yourself first. So both as parents and gurus, that's a question we have to ask ourselves, that do I have that feeling that Swami is my nearest and dearest friend? The second thing is, Swami is illustrated in all of his life story, that when God comes as a human on earth, he goes through the same trials and tribulations that a human being does. He has to practice. I mean, he can just snap his fingers and miracles can happen, but he kind of saves that for the big stuff. So for everything else, he practices. And the reason he does that is because he has a message for us. He wants to let us know that we can achieve perfection through practice and discipline. And to teach us that, he models it himself. So when you have Bhagwan showing us through his life example, the same way we as parents and gurus have to also think that we are, Oh, sorry. So, to just break off from this slightly, I was going to say that the children who are in the SSE program right now, even the group 4 children, a lot of them may not have recollection of seeing Swami in the physical form. Some of the group 4s might, but it's been a long time. So we as teachers, as the gurus, and as the parents have that responsibility that we have to be living examples of what Swami's message is, because that's how the kids are going to learn, by watching us. One way that Swami is very relatable to me is through stories. And I was thinking about this because when I was a little kid, I used to love to hear stories. Anytime anyone said, "Come here, I'll tell you a story of Krishna," "Come here, I'll tell you a story of Lord Rama," I would be there like that. I used to love to hear stories. And there is an excellent series of books called Krishnavatar, and it's written by K.M. Munshi. And the reason I like that series is because it tells the story of Lord Krishna from the point of view of a human being. All the thought processes he went through, all the trials, tribulations, everything he went through, he was still divine in that whole series, but it humanized him. And so when we talk about Swami's story, I was talking about this with another SSC teacher recently. When we talk about Swami's story, how can we humanize Swami? That makes him relatable. He's not this divinity who we can't approach, but now he's very relatable. And then the second thing is relevant. Swami's teachings have so much meaning for everybody. How do we make them relevant to the age group that we're working with, that we're teaching, or who are our children? So if you look at Swami's discourses, and I use a lot of Swami's discourses in my group 4 class, I use the ones that have super practical advice. So for example, just the other day I used a discourse where Swami talks about Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And in that, he was talking about peace for the body. And one piece of advice he gives is whatever news you receive about any event, you should receive it with calmness and serenity. Now that's a piece of advice which we can all practice in our daily lives. It's not easy, but we can practice it. We can work towards practicing it. Another piece of advice, he says, is if somebody says something about you which is not true, don't get worked up about it. Again, extremely practical advice. So if you look at Swami's discourses, they are full of practical advice which can be applied in daily life. So when you find those nuggets and you teach those to the children and you have discussions with the children about those, then they find Swami's teachings relevant, and they know that when I have answers for my questions, if I go to Swami's teachings, there's a really good chance that I might find answers that I'm looking for. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be straightforward. I'll have to still think and reflect on it, but those answers are there. So with making Swami relatable and making Swami relevant. So those are the two ways that I feel that's how we connect our children to Bhagwan. And as far as a moment where in my teaching experience where I've just stopped and said, whoa. I remember once, every time I have class, SSE class, I will always ask the children, how was your week? How are you doing? Anything interesting happen? Just small talk, just asking how their week was. And so I finished that once, and then I was about to start on my lesson when one of the girls just suddenly blurted out, she was like, "Auntie, before you start, you always ask us about our week. How was your week? We never ask you." And it was such a simple question, but the fact that she asked me, that just made me stop for a second. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, somebody asked me about how my week was. A student asked me. And I didn't start bawling in front of them, but it did bring this kind of feeling into my heart that that's just so sweet for somebody to think about that. And it's a very small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it was very big for me. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Beautiful, Supriya. Actually, this reminds me of one incident where I was talking to one of the students, and that fellow was saying, we always go to Swami and say, Swami, I want that, I want this, I want this. But have we ever went back to Swami and said, Swami, what do you want from us? Are we satisfying you? Are we giving back to you? No, we never did that. We only talked about it. Even when we saw Swami, we only remembered, Swami, my parents have come. Can you give interview or something like that? This kind of stuff only. Beautiful aha moment for you. And I like the way how you projected it. Swami is relatable and relevant. Beautiful take home point for all the SSC parents and students. Thanks for that. And with this, let's move on to Gopi. Brother Gopi, do you have any aha moment when you're dealing with your children in the classroom? 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, I'll try to be very brief here. It's already 9 o'clock, and I'm sure people are ready to go for something that's happening in the next hour. So SSC experience for me is full of aha moments. So it's kind of hard to pick. But because I was speaking about the role of parents, I'll just relate to this particular one. So we had been talking in our class for a good bit of time about, anger and how you respond. And, I think one of the things that I mentioned in my earlier thing was in the parent prayer was about not speaking hurtfully. And we were talking about reaction, response, and things like that. And in the class, there was a few students who were quite engaged and a few students who were quite distracted. So I kind of got this feeling that maybe I'm kind of not being practical. Maybe I'm being a little too heavy on my, quoting from Swami and things like that. So I was kind of experimenting with how to kind of get that message across. So I was asking Swami in my mind after the class, how can I do better? Are the boys getting it? I was kind of feeling a little restless about it. Well, time passed, and Swami does not always give you the answer when you're asking, but when you're looking, you can see that he's answering a question that you had some time back. And that's exactly what happened. So we were in a gathering, sidelines of a satsang or something, and one of the boys' parents came to me and they said, we want to share something very, very beautiful that happened for us. And I said, oh, sure, I'm very happy to hear that. And then they went on to say, the husband and wife, the parents, were having a heated argument. And to keep it very brief and not make it too dramatic, the son came and intervened them in a very beautiful way using Swami's words. And they actually told me what he said. And these were the exact things that I was wondering whether the boys would get if I spoke to them or when I was speaking to them. And he used Swami's words to calm them down, pacify them down. And then he went on to explain to them what was happening in the class, and what they were talking about was precisely this subject. And he gave them the whole lesson plan. He became the SSC guru for them. And they got the lesson plan and they came back and gave me a feedback. So Swami gave me a full closed loop feedback saying that you keep doing your best. The boys will get it. I'll make sure that the boys are getting what they need to get when they need to get. And you will see the glimpses of them getting it like this. So that was the beautiful way I got my answer back, Sairam.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for a beautiful episode of that. Let's move on to Paddy Uncle. Uncle, if you have any aha moment with your students during your SSC teaching career, we would like to listen to you the next 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And
I don't know, but
after that, I would request Suja to come for the closing remarks. And so that because we are running short of time, then we want to close it at the earliest. Go ahead, Uncle, please.
Yeah. It was, I don't know if I would call it a ha-ha moment, but it's an unforgettable moment, right? Several years back when I was teaching group 4, it's a kind of a morbid way to start a class, but I always got the students together and said, once you leave this earth, how do you want people to remember you? And I would tell them to put a sentence that should reside in their tombstones. So kids will write all kinds of things. For me, that was a way to see their level of progress coming into grade 4. So I had this kid, he was an exceptionally bright kid. He said, I want to be remembered as the greatest inventor who transformed the world, right? So I said, okay. And based on this, the questions I would ask would be a function of what they had put in the tombstone. And the class went on, and he was one of the people who I kind of kept asking a lot of questions. End of the year, to measure the progress of their learning, I would go back and say on the last day, now based on what we learned, go back and write that one line on your tombstone. And kids would come and write it, and there'll be good progress. But this kid wrote this. He said, there lies a good man who always tried not to hurt people. That was his statement. So I went to him and I said, why do you say that? The answer he gave me just completely took me off. He said, you know, Uncle, it's so easy for me to read and get A's in my class. And that's easy for me. But the theme that year for the class was help ever, hurt never. So he said, I never, ever, I tried not to hurt people, and I could never, never stop hurting people. He said, that's more difficult for me than getting A grades, right? I was just, he had learned a big lesson right there. And he said, that's what I'm going to focus on, right? So it's not a ha-ha moment, but it's a moment that you remember. And I still track this kid, and I'm sure he's going to do very well because he's bright and he got the right values to follow, right? So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sairam. Thank you so much, Paddy Uncle. And thank you so much, Supriya, Gopi, and Paddy Uncle. So what I'm going to go through is you all have given us such wonderful golden nuggets to take with us for the teachers, for the students, and for the parents. I'm just going to quickly go over the highlights and then we'll wrap up. Yeah. So you all started off on your what inspires you. And Gopi, you talked about your spiritual deepening because of SSC. And Supriya, you talked about how Swami is your inspiration and how children inspire you. And Paddy Uncle, you talked about your first inspiration for SSC was Bernie Smead. And then how SSC is a big transformation process, and it's the biggest sadhana that one can go through. And Swami is the underlying connection in all three of you. And then moving on, Supriya, we talked about, you talked about what's the real value and benefit of SSC. And I really liked what you said, right? SSC gurus, they build a heart-to-heart connection, whereas teachers, they build a head-to-head connection. That was very powerful. And also you said when the head bows down to the heart, love just flows. I could just visualize that.
Both of those are very powerful because they're Swami's direct words.
That's so powerful, yeah. And then we moved on to Paddy Uncle, and you gave us a lot of tips and advice if anybody wants to teach SSE. And thank you for doing that, because being an SSE teacher is definitely an honorable role that we all should take. And you talked about it's a spiritual sadhana, and then teachers play a very, very important role in the students' transformation. And then also you brought out a very good point that teachers have to self-inquire before teaching. And then you had a lot of good quotes from Swami or from your veranda conversations with him. And you talked about the bookish knowledge, different types, 4 types of knowledge: bookish knowledge, general knowledge, discriminatory knowledge, and practical knowledge. And then you said the more we practice and the more we discipline ourselves, the better we become. And you underlying, you said it's the best sadhana for self-transformation. So moving along, Gopi, you addressed the parents as to the role of the parents. And you said, and Murlibai said, as a parent, we don't have a choice. We have to be a parent, but teachers, we have a choice whether we want to teach or not. And then you said the best thing we can do for our child is bring them to SSC. So that was a very wonderful statement. And then you also said that parents have to be role models because children are watching, and the parents have to really be happy and not show anxiety because they are constantly watching. And also you said 3 points. One is we have to be, children want validation from us. Are we doing what we say we're doing? And they also want inspiration and encouragement from us. And then you read through the parent prayer. That was beautiful. And then also you also mentioned that heart-to-heart connection with the student and teacher is very, very important. So moving along, Supriya, you talked about how to instill Swami in the middle. You brought out very good points, keeping it, bringing Swami to the children, keeping it relatable and relevant. So that was really nice. And also, it's our duty as gurus and parents to make children become aware of Swami. And also you said you can achieve perfection by discipline and practice. And then you said you encouraged everybody to read Swami's discourses because there are a lot of practical nuggets in it. And I loved all your aha moments. For you, Supriya, it was how your child, your student asked you, how was your week? And for you, Gopi, how your student went and did a lesson plan at the house, and they came back and told you. And how, Paddy, for you, how your student talked about what he wanted on his tombstone, and very, very powerful messages. So thank you all for coming here, spending your evening with us and sharing such wonderful nuggets. And to you all watching, listeners, we will have a similar panel session on November 4th, and we will have 3 different panelists. And please send us your questions, and so we can answer them. So with that, I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to thank Swami. Dear Swami, thank you for bringing us all together and for bringing such wonderful, inspirational messages from all the different lovely participants here. And thank you so much. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.